Before money ever leaves your hands, there is a moment so small it is usually invisible. A pause, a breath, a silent agreement you make with yourself. Most people never notice this moment, and because they never notice it, they never realize how much power quietly lives there. You were never taught this, not because it was secret, but because it was considered obvious to those who came before you. It was woven into daily life, passed through gesture rather than explanation. A murmur before exchange, a feeling before transaction, a knowing before loss. You can feel it now if you slow down. Think of the last time you opened your wallet, tapped your card, or transferred money. Notice what arose first, a tightening, a calculation, a subtle fear disguised as responsibility. Or perhaps a rush, money moving too fast to be felt. That inner response is older than language. Long before coins were minted or paper was printed, humans understood that exchange was never just material. It was psychological, emotional, energetic. What moved from one hand to another carried meaning far beyond its weight. In ancient marketplaces, people did not rush this moment. They did not treat money as an enemy to be escaped or a god to be worshipped. It was approached like fire, useful, powerful, and requiring respect. There was something they acknowledged before parting with it. Not a prayer in the way you might imagine, not a demand, not a plea, more like a recognition. Because here is the quiet truth. Most people never realize money does not leave you the way you think it does. It follows the story you tell yourself as it moves. If the story is loss, it behaves like loss. If the story is sacrifice, it feels like sacrifice. If the story is fear, it teaches fear. And if the story is something else, something calmer, steadier, it responds accordingly. This is where the forgotten key begins, not with what you say out loud, but with what you assume is happening when you spend. You were conditioned very early to believe that money leaving you means you have less, that the act of spending is a diminishment, a subtraction, a small wound. That belief alone shapes years of experience. But older traditions understood a paradox. What feels like loss is often circulation. What looks like departure is often movement. And what moves returns if not blocked by fear. This is why two people can earn the same amount, spend the same amount, and live in completely different realities. One feels perpetually drained, the other feels supported, watched over, somehow balanced. The difference is not discipline, it is relationship. Money responds not to force, but to orientation, to the inner posture you hold in that brief moment before you open your wallet. And this is where you begin your 3-day shift, not by changing how much you spend, not by controlling or restricting yourself, but by introducing a single sentence, soft, unhurried, almost unremarkable, before money moves. You will not say it to make something happen. You will say it to acknowledge what is already true. For the next 3 days, every time you're about to spend, even on something small, you pause for half a breath, just enough to become present. And silently or aloud, if you prefer, you say, "What moves from me returns to me, changed only by wisdom." That's all. No visualization, no forcing belief, no emotional effort, just recognition. Notice what this sentence does not say. It does not say money will multiply. It does not say you will become rich. It does not bargain with the future. It simply reframes movement as continuity rather than loss. On the first day, you may notice nothing at all, or you may notice a subtle softening in your body, less tension in the chest, less urgency in the hands. On the second day, you may notice your spending feels quieter, less reactive, less emotionally charged. You may even catch yourself choosing differently without trying to. By the third day, something more interesting tends to occur. People often report they didn't lose what they expected to lose, not just financially, but emotionally. The familiar sense of regret, guilt, or anxiety doesn't arrive on schedule. In its place is neutrality, sometimes even calm. This is not coincidence. You are interrupting an old psychological loop, one that equated spending with harm, one that trained your nervous system to brace every time money moved. And when the body stops bracing, reality subtly reorganizes. Opportunities feel slightly easier. Unexpected balances appear. Conversations around money soften. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just a quiet correction, like a compass needle returning north. In the next part, you will understand why this simple recognition works so quickly and how ancient systems of exchange were designed to prevent the very anxiety modern people accept as normal. For now, there is nothing to master. Just notice the moment before and let it be different, because the shift has already begun. There is a reason this works without effort. In older systems of life, money was never separated from meaning. It was not abstract. It was not invisible. It was a symbol of movement between people, between time, between intention and outcome. When something left your possession, it did not vanish. It entered a relationship. This understanding was not philosophical. It was practical. People noticed that when exchange was treated as loss, life contracted. When it was treated as circulation, life stayed open. So they built quiet rituals into daily behavior, not to control fate, but to stay aligned with it. These rituals were not elaborate. They were small pauses, phrases, gestures, barely noticeable to an outsider. But internally, they prevented fragmentation. They kept the psyche whole. Because here is the deeper psychological truth. The human mind cannot distinguish between financial loss and existential threat unless it is trained otherwise. When you spend without awareness, a primitive signal often fires. Something like, resources are leaving, prepare. This subtle alarm accumulates over years. It tightens decision-making, it narrows imagination, it teaches the body to expect scarcity even when none is present. This is why anxiety around money persists, even in abundance. Ancient cultures understood this and refused to let money movements train the nervous system in fear. Instead, they anchored exchange to continuity. The phrase you began using, "What moves from me returns to me," changed only by wisdom, does something very specific inside you. It closes the loop. The mind relaxes because the story is no longer unfinished. There is no dangling sense of depletion. The exchange is perceived as complete, balanced, resolved, even before the outcome appears. On the first day, this primarily affects your body. The shoulders soften, the jaw loosens. Spending no longer feels like an event to recover from. On the second day, it affects your perception. You notice where money actually goes. You feel less resentment toward expenses, even necessary ones, especially necessary ones. By the third day, the effect often becomes external, not in dramatic ways, but in corrections. A bill is smaller than expected. A delay buys you time. A purchase lasts longer than you assumed. Someone offers help without being asked. These are not miracles, they are alignments. When fear is removed from the moment of exchange, decisions subtly improve. Timing sharpens. You hesitate at the right moment instead of the anxious one. You act when clarity arrives, not urgency. This is why nothing feels forced. You are not trying to attract money. You are removing the resistance that taught it how to leave badly. There is also something else happening, something quieter. Your identity around money begins to shift. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who loses, spends, or survives, You begin to experience yourself as someone who circulates, someone money passes through without damage, someone who can engage with it without shrinking. This internal shift is subtle, but powerful, because identity shapes expectation, and expectation shapes outcome far more reliably than effort. Older traditions knew this and protected identity fiercely. They understood that a person who believes they are diminished by exchange will always feel poorer than they are. And a person who believes exchange refines rather than drains them moves differently through life. By day 3, you may notice something unexpected. You trust yourself more, not because you have more money, but because the act of spending no longer feels like self-betrayal. It feels neutral, sometimes even appropriate. This is the beginning of financial peace, not as a number, but as a relationship. If you continue beyond 3 dies, the phrase may start to change on its own. Shorten, soften, become more intuitive. That is natural. It means it has been absorbed, but there is no need to push further yet. For now, simply notice what you did not lose. The tension, the regret, the background anxiety. Those absences are the proof. In the final moment, there is one last adjustment, small, optional, but sealing, that completes the cycle and allows this understanding to settle without effort. Not as a practice, but as a knowing. At some point today or tomorrow, you will open your wallet without remembering to say anything at all. And that will be the sign. Because the transformation was never in the words, it was in the pause. It was in the recognition that nothing truly leaves you when you are aligned with movement rather than loss. From this moment on, money no longer teaches your body fear. Exchange no longer fragments your attention, and spending no longer erodes your sense of safety. You are already on the other side of the shift. There is nothing to maintain, nothing to repeat perfectly, nothing to guard. The relationship has been corrected, and what is corrected does not need effort to continue. You will notice this not by what arrives, but by what quietly stops happening. The tightening, the bracing, the feeling that something is always slipping away. Those patterns dissolve first, and when they do, the rest follows, naturally, inevitably, and without announcement. You may close your wallet now. Nothing has been lost. Something has been remembered.